Click the links for Odysee, Bit Chute. This is part 2 because the first version was already 10 minutes long of the Reuters data scientist fired after nuking the Black Lives Matter narrative, exposing significant left-wing bias and reporting. Like, yeah, no doubt. But it's credit to him for being honest about it. So there's two things that are going on. He exposed the bias in the media, and then also the narrative they're trying to push, that BLM is trying to push, this Rosenberg-founded organization is trying to push this nonsense that is fundamentally nonsense. And the thing is, if we're willing to be brave and politically incorrect, we have the facts on our side. Very, very much so. We have the facts on our side. The data supports us. It doesn't support their narrative. Their narrative is insane that police are... Hey, we're on the right. We want better police too. Very few of us are this mindless kind of thin blue line type of thing that might have been popular several years ago. We're beyond that, because we see both the people on the right and the left see police acting poorly. We want better trained cops. We want district attorneys and cops holding each other accountable. Now, back in the day, I thought they used to think there was this incestuous relationship between DAs and cops, where the DAs would just let this stuff go. It's like, why are they doing that? You think, oh, they must be pro-cop. Finally, it dawned on me, and it took me a little while to understand. The DAs are not letting the cops get away with this because they're some thin blue line, right-wing, pro-cop guys. Not in many of the cases. What they're doing a lot of times with this is this is one aspect of the Frankfurt School and the destruction of the society. They're accelerating the destruction of the society. If they know that they're not holding cops accountable, and there's a certain percentage of cops who should be put in prison for doing whatever crimes they're doing, but if the DAs know that they don't hold the cops accountable, you're going to get worse cops doing more bad acts, which leads to societal decay, low trust, conflict, where if the DAs did their job and like you took like the less than 1% of cops who are doing things that are egregious, and you didn't let them off with a slap on the wrist, you threw the book at them and you put them in prison, you prosecuted them, you gave them due process, but you presented the state's side and the ultimate goal being get better cops, hold cops accountable, put them on film at all time. The other side of the equation is, I think everyone has got cell phones and there's security systems all over the place. We now know what the cops are dealing with. And so a lot of us who were kind of more libertarian on the cop question, like we see both sides of it. We see the small percentage of cops who are behaving badly and who need to be held accountable. We see a large percentage of people on the street who are just animals. They're just like savages. And they, a lot of them were made. Some of them were born, some of them were made. There's a lot going on with that, not to be talked about on YouTube. So because of cell phone cameras, because of security cameras, because everyone's got high definition cameras, we've got social media, stuff that you're not seeing on YouTube, you're showing, like you can show stuff on Twitter that you can't show on YouTube. Then it goes to Gab, and then it goes to Odysee, and it goes all over the place. So it may not be on YouTube, but it's out there. The thing is, people on both sides of the equation are seeing what's going on, and this narrative of, I didn't do nothing, that kind of narrative is like, people know that's not a fair and accurate statement. And at the same time, we want cops held accountable. But we also see that they're dealing just with the worst scum of the earth. And it's a sloppy situation where the DAs are letting cops get away with things because they want conflict between cops and these people like Hillary Clinton had some words for them in the 90s. She had a phrase she used. You need to hold people accountable. There's a DA who just got put into place now who's changing the incarceration situation, where it's going to be, most things are going to be misdemeanors, and he's not going to press for incarceration for almost anything other than Malum and Say acts that are at the far end of Malum and Say, evil in and of themselves. All other things are going to be either classified as misdemeanors or not prosecuted, or you're going to put on like a GPS monitor. You're talking about the end of a city, the end of civilization. That's That's not a dramatic, hyperbolic statement. There's, I mean, you can ask, I think most historians or any legal scholar would look at this and go, okay, you've got a Soros Bolshevik, or not, I mean, the Soros is the Bolshevik, but these are the puppets. You have a puppet DA put in office whose job is to not do anything. He sent a policy letter to his assistant district attorneys to say not to prosecute, not to seek prison sentences for a lot of these things. It's like, you got a certain percentage of American population who, if they find out they're not going to be prosecuted for things, they're going to go out and commit more of these malum in se acts, which they are in fact doing. Even left-wing people have got to start waking up to this kind of thing, which I don't know what it takes to red pill. I don't know what it takes to red pill the average San Francisco liberal. I always use San Francisco as like the kind of cliche liberal who's getting his car broken into, and like you see interviews of these people every now and then, and they're like, it's usually white and Asians who are either saying like, oh, we don't feel safe in our neighborhood. It's like, you voted for all these people, you voted for all these policies. It's like, you say you support this, and now they're robbing your garages and your cars and doing home invasions. It's like, oh, what did you expect? I mean, this is like, what do you think the end result of CRT is? Where like everything is anti-white. It's like, well, you look at the FBI crime stats, and like, we're not going to have FBI crime stats for long because the stats are not in their favor. So they're just going to get rid of the stats. They're just going to stop keeping those stats. You look at that, it's like, yeah, this isn't a white problem. White non-Hispanic people are not committing these malum in se acts. Maybe malum prohibita acts for sure, but you can watch the news and you know what's up. Like, you have to know what's up by now. Eventually, it's going to take someone to say something politically incorrect to get the ball rolling on this and to get people to face facts. And it's not a conversation you'll have on YouTube. And the thing is Hillary Clinton in the 90s with her comment on the Predator situation, and that was like 94 maybe, that was more based than any conservative Republican in office right now. Can you imagine Ron DeSantis, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, anyone, governor, mayor, any representative position on the right, calling them super predators right now in 2021 after the 2020 black riots? Can you imagine them being referred to that way? Hillary Clinton said that a few years ago, 25 years ago. That's inconceivable. That's how far left the country has slipped. Hillary Clinton was right when she said that. Even Joe Biden was more based a few years ago. Anyway, so this guy, Zach Kriegman, former Reuters data scientist, fired after he did statistical analysis which refuted claims to BLM, spoke out against the company's culture of diversity and inclusion. The thing is, this is how we beat them. We beat them with cold, hard facts, assuming we have a platform in which to present it, which we do now. We have alt media, and we have ways to support those reporters on alt media. Fund me on coffee. Which unquestionably celebrated the BLM narrative. We beat them with facts, and we have to keep hitting them with this kind of stuff and getting our narrative out. And if you're on mainstream social media like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram are pretty censorious, but Twitter, you can dog whistle a lot of stuff. But we have alt media. So anyway, I mean, fight them on whatever battlefield they present themselves on. So journalist writes, driven by what is called a moral obligation to speak out, Kriegman refused to celebrate unquestionably the BLM narrative, which is a lie, and his company's diversity and inclusion program. And to the contrary, he argued Reuters was exhibiting significant left-wing bias in the newsroom, and the ongoing BLM protests, riots, and calls to defund the police would wreak havoc on minority communities. And now this is still blue pill thinking. You're framing it as what will harm the minority communities, which are set to become a majority, or at least plurality in a few years. It's okay to frame it as what will affect the European American community. It's okay to advocate for your own interests. You know what I'm saying? If you follow me, it's okay to say you matter, we matter, our interests matter. We have to zealously advocate for our own interests, like other groups advocate for their interests. So you don't have to frame it as, oh, the lowest black unemployment. Well, what about the European Americans? Like, shouldn't you want to focus on the 60% of the country who put you in office, Trump. Anyway, so Krugman felt increasingly disillusioned by the Reuters propaganda that was being put out. Finally, he posted a long, data-intensive critique of BLM's as company's hypocrisy. He was sent to Human Resources and Diversity and Inclusion for the chance to reform his thoughts. He refused, and they fired him. Krugman has got a BA in BS in economics, JD, years of experience. Okay, he's got a bunch of experience, blah, blah, blah. By the time he was fired, he was director. So, okay, he knows a little bit of law, a little economics, a little data science. He's a pretty good guy to have in any situation when you need just a clear thinker, someone who's a clear thinker. Following George Floyd's and Chauvin's interaction, Krugman described Reuters as a blue bubble. It was a blue bubble way before that. But the thing is, Krugman, I'm sure he's a left winger also. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there. But I mean, the left wing is moving so far left now that they're scaring away moderate left wing people who are looking at like the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. Like, there's a lot of bone gardens that were associated with Mao Zedong and Stalin and Cuba and Southeast Asia and Central America and South America. Whenever there's communism, there's a lot of bodies that get turned into fertilizer. Anyway, so people were constantly celebrating BLM, whereas assumed that everyone was on board. Always kind of look at this stuff in a almost a artistic manner, where you look at something and you go, well, where's the facts and evidence? It's like, oh, it's just no. Where's the facts and evidence? Where's the studies? Where's the proposals, the counter proposals, the cross examinations, the rebuttals? Where's the evidence? Anyway, so the company asked employees to participate in a 21-day racial. You got to push back on all this stuff legally, socially, using social media, and you can use a lot of their language against them. Talk about your feelings. Talk about how you feel as a marginalized and oppressed person. You don't have to identify as whatever they're trying to identify you as. You can identify as whatever you want. So they're pushing CRT, Frankfurt School, Bolsheviks, Marxism. Instructions on how to be a better white person. Well, you don't have to identify as a white person. You can say even that identity feels like an attack. There's different, European collections. It's like who, what are the elements of that? What is the definition of that word? What is a white person? Is it European, Western European? You can say, as an Irish person, I don't identify as white because we are historically marginalized and oppressed. Even modern day, I feel marginalized and oppressed. You don't have to prove it because they're not proving any of this stuff. You just identify as marginalized and oppressed, a person of color, or as whatever. You get what I'm saying. It's like you can use their own nonsense against them because none of this is based on fact. And it's like what is not proposed by fact doesn't have to be defeated by fact, which is. So the materials were both patronizing and outright racist. They were told that their black colleagues, well, who's the black colleague? Oh, it's anyone who identifies as black. So guess what you can do with that? Are confused and scared and barely able to show up to work. They allegedly felt pressured to take the personal trauma that we all know to be true. And see, none of this is proved by facts and evidence. It's just there's some globalist who's penning this poison, liar, worm tongue stuff. We have to fight this. Either fight it or accelerate it. Tough call, really. And tuck it away to protect white people. Again, like what is a white person? These guys are Jewish. Do they identify as white? Do they have to identify? Can you identify somebody else, or do they self-identify? If you're poor, are you no longer white because you're marginalized and oppressed and disenfranchised? What does that word mean? It's like they're weaponizing that word. The thing is, you can use their same arguments against them because their arguments are based on emotion and based on I feel you're oppressing me. Oh, I'm not, but literally you're oppressing me by saying you're not oppressing me. This is marginalization and disenfranchisement. This is you get what I'm saying. This you can do the same nonsense against them. You just have to do it with a straight face. So they felt pressure to take the personal trauma we all know to be true. They're unable to grasp. The thing is, the black experience. They focus on the black experience because of their own whiteness, their Europeanness. What about if I'm Arab or I'm Latino? I'm not white. I'm not black. You seem to be framing this in terms of white and black. I'm of Arab American. How am I supposed to deal with this? The thing is, if the whites are the ones who are being put in this crucible, then you definitely want to hop out of that crucible. You say, I'm an American Indian. I don't identify as white. I'm all these other kinds of things that you do not identify as white anymore. I'm a Latino, non-white. I'm Hispanic, whatever. You get the idea. It's like, these are not ethnicities. These are whatever. You can do the same thing against them. Or if I was Kriegman, I'd be, listen, I'm Jewish. I'm from the Middle East. I don't identify as white. All this kind of stuff, you can use the same stuff against them. Even the framing of it is racist in and of itself. And realistically, in the corporate environment, you can't do it. I mean, you can do this stuff and you'll just be persona non grata. But the thing is, now you have social media to do this. Thing is, okay, so they start going into right the wrongs of slavery and systemic oppression. Thing is, you're not liable for slavery. There was like a very small percentage of people who lived in the South owned slaves. They're not you because it was 200 years ago. Why would you be responsible for other people's actions? That's a causal fallacy, and it's like, it doesn't make sense, because where would you stop that causal train? It would never end. It would just go back to 2 million years ago to Lucy. You got to push back on all this kind of stuff. Ask the old question, like, who controlled the slave trade? Would you like to get into that? And Reuters would not address that issue. Anyway, so Reuters employees were told to let themselves get called up by minority colleagues. Again, you want to identify as a minority and respond with, I believe you. Okay, so this is just Bolshevik propaganda. This is anti-whiteism, which is a good phrase to use. Bolshevism, Marxism, anti-white hatred by the same Frankfurt school. Like, these are a lot of hot words. Those 5 hot words are good to keep using, to keep attacking them with. And ultimately, like, you're not going to stay at a place like Reuters, which is openly a globalist, anti-white, Marxist, Bolshevik company. The goal is propaganda. They might report some news, but the news is crafted in a certain way to be anti-white, to push this Bolshevik narrative. The thing is, we do have alternative social media, and we do have Twitter and mainstream social media. Like, there is a way to fight this. You get the post-millennial. Like, I know these are somewhat controlled ops. This post-millennial, Zero Hedge, Gateway Pundit, Blaze Rebel. Yeah, I know who owns those too. Like, the guys on the right are also, Con Ops Incorporated. But the thing is, it's not 100% Con Ops. Like, they're still doing good work, bringing out attention to this kind of stuff. So ultimately, white people of European descent, like, again, like, all this stuff is so, it's like, they're trying to pin down clouds. It's just how you identify. It's like, well, what happens in a company where nobody identifies as white anymore? Suddenly everyone's American Indian, Hispanic, Arab, Asian descent. Like, people who are, you get people who are blonde hair, blue eyed, and you're like, no, actually, I'm Jewish, I'm from the Middle East. You're like, blonde hair, blue eyed, yeah, I just, it's how I identify. Just, I'm actually identify as from the Middle East, even with this blonde hair, blue eyed. I don't know what happened. That's the next step. That's going to be interesting to see. Anyway, like, all this stuff is built on, it's a house. It's built on sand. None of it, like, the thing is, you can't, if you're in this corporate structure and you try to ask them, like, okay, where's the evidence for this? It's like, there's nothing in place for you to opt out of this kind of stuff. There's no place for you to raise a hand and say, this is just Bolshevik brainwashing. Because if you work for Reuters, they know, they're already, like, you're already on board with this kind of stuff. But I will say, this Kriegman guy, who I'm assuming he's of Jewish descent, is probably in this kind of a tricky situation where it's like, he doesn't know how to identify for the sake of this kind of thing. Anyway, but hey, to his credit, he's coming out and he said the company's got a blue bubble, created a significant bias in the company's news reporting. They're not having the internal discussions about the facts and research, and they're not letting that shape how they present the news to people. They've adapted a perspective, and they're unwilling to examine the perspective, even internally, and that's shaping everything that they write. Reuters adapted a narrative that promotes a naive left-wing narrative about BLM, fails to provide accurate context, which is particularly egregious because, unlike obviously left-wing outlets as the New York Times, Reuters had a reputation as a source of objective news. I don't know what the color of the sky in your world is when you think Reuters had objective news reporting. There's it's been left wing for as long as I've been paying attention to it, for over a decade. Maybe it recently got very worse after Trump derangement syndrome. I'd have to look up to see who owns Reuters, but I guarantee it's going to be a globalist who's pushing a far left agenda. So what he's saying is, like, he's a left wing guy, and he finally noticed that it's far left. He noticed that within the past 2 years because of the BLM riots. But the rest of us who are furthest to the right than him have noticed it for a long time. All the mainstream media is far left. It's been far left for over a decade. Anyway, long enough. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.